Hi everybody, I'm Lance from Permanent Records and I'm here with Jed Mayhew, my old pal Jed Mayhew. You may know him from the band Zig Zags. Zig Zags has released an album this year called Strange Masters. They have a New Year's Eve show coming up at the Roadhouse and a new record in the works, and we'll talk about that here shortly. And Jed is also in this great band, Golden Grease. Golden Grease released this album Zero Time on the Permanent Records label back in 2023.
Can I talk? Am I allowed to
You're
talk?
not allowed. Not until I say it.
All right.
Jed, we've known each other a long time, but I'm still really excited to sit down and talk with you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here during the day when it's completely empty and I can, get a beer as soon as I want, and then I have to stand in line.
You're never in line when I'm behind the bar.
I know you guys are always so nice about hooking me up with non-alcoholic beer.
And we've only just begun.
This is gonna be a long one.
So Zig Zags, Golden Grease. You also do Instagram guitar tutorials. You're a real estate agent and a gourmet chef. Did I miss anything at all?
Actor.
Oh, how could I forget that? Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, part-time actor in low-budget horror films, if they'll have me or whatever, or anything for that matter. Yeah, all those things. I mean, where do you want to start?
Yeah. Well, I guess really the question is, you're at an airport or a hotel bar and a stranger just introduces themselves and asks what you do. What do you say to that stranger?
Oh, geez. Right now, fuck. I don't know, man. Right now, sometimes it depends on where we're at. Like, sometimes I'd say real estate if it meant that I could like sell someone a house or something like that.
Of course.
But for the most part, I just say music. That I do music, and then they go, "Oh, what do you do?" And I go, "I play guitar and I sing."
Yeah.
And then they say, "What band are you in?" And then I say, "Well, you probably haven't heard of it." And then I tell them, and they haven't heard of it. And then I say, "We have a small but very loyal following." And that's what I usually say, when it comes to Zig Zags or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just say that I'm a guitar player and that I sing for the most part.
Which of those things that we just mentioned is the most important to you?
Guitar, vocals, or you mean out of all the things that I do?
All those.
I can get bored very easily, and that's why I think I end up doing a lot of different things. I'll go really rabid on guitar for like months on end, and then something will happen, or we'll get busy doing something else, or we'll finish recording a record or whatever, and then I won't pick it up for a month or two, and then I'll wait till that moment that I get kind of inspired to do it again. And then when I do, I'm like fully back into it, and I kind of feel like I'm like that with everything, but definitely like the constant is always music, and it always has been since I was a little kid, because all these other things, growing up in a small town, I never thought like, oh, I'm gonna go to LA and act or whatever, like, or, and no one wants to do real estate. You just have to, just because you can't do other things. You can't make money doing anything else. So, and then, but I was in my room, obsessed with Metallica, obsessed with, Black Flag, and so I could sort of mimic that thing by playing guitar, alone or whatever. And so that's just always been a constant, is playing music and then working in music,
Yeah.
I worked in music for a long time too, so it's like it's always been sort of a huge part of my life.
The music we like the most exists in the underground for the most part.
Right.
And being in a band in the underground is really tough.
Right.
Obviously.
Right.
I don't think we. I thought you were here because we were buddies and we just wanted to talk to them.
Yeah. Anything I can do.
Especially if you're trying to make a living from
Sure.
it, right? So you're writing, you're recording, you're touring, repeat. You've been doing that a long time.
Yeah.
What, after this much time, keeps you motivated to continue doing it, even though you obviously aren't able to make a living from just music?
Right. Well, I think about that a lot, and I think about, Zig Zags in particular. The two bands that you mentioned are very different as far as what I kind of get out of them. You know, Zig Zags, I write the music and the lyrics, and then I show it to the guys, and we kind of finish everything together, you know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of, that band was sort of started to create a band that like my 14-year-old self wanted, because I'd always been in people's bands and always, you know, I liked hanging out with people and being in bands and doing the thing or whatever, but that band was like kind of like, I'm gonna like try to like stoke out my like younger self with a band that like I would have wanted to hear, you know, which is sort of, people have called it like this garage metal thing, you know. It's very like, I think what happens is you and I, you get to a certain point with music where it's like, it's almost like a, what do you call it, like abstract art. So it's like there's a really good stuff, and then there's this kind of like stuff that we talk about, and a lot of like the kind of stuff that you guys put out, like the brown acid stuff, where it's like some of it's almost so bad it's good, but it's like the sentiment behind the thing is more important than like the drummer being awesome, you know, or whatever. It's like what's the fucking drive behind it? What's the inspiration? Like I think of a record like well, it's like a Michael Yonkers record, or there was a record that made the rounds, well, like 20 years ago, this guy Kenneth Higney at demonstrations, you know, where it's just like, this guy's he's a lunatic, and he's alone, and he's making this kind of like dark, heavy record, you know, and a lot of those like kind of like stoner records, or even like garage rock, you know, where it's like the Nuggets things, you know, where it's like, these guys aren't the Stones, they're not the Beatles, they're like in their fucking neighborhood with their 4 pals, and they're banging it out the best they can, you know, and they're very far away from London or New York or whatever.
And a metal band that exists in that world that we've talked about a lot is White Boy and the Average Rat.
Exactly, yeah, which was
example.
Massive influence on Zig Zags starting, because it's like, oh, I can do this, you know, like I can do it like this. I can't do it like Slayer or Iron Maiden or something, but I can like do like my approximation of it. And then it's like a band, sometimes these bands, they almost sound tougher in a way, because there's this like lo-fi quality to it. What was the initial question?
What keeps you motivated to keep doing it?
Right. I think what keeps me motivated at this point, well, for a while I was motivated by spite and revenge. And now I'm just like, I've gotten to this point where with Zig Zags, it's like the other 2 guys in the band, they've been through the ringer too, you know, and they have kids, and we were all married, and it's like, it's sort of, you know, I never thought I'd be in a band like that, where it was like this kind of like escape, you know, like where it's just like, oh, let's get away from the wife and the kids for a minute and jam. Like I never wanted to do that, you know, but here I am. And so, you know, it's just, it's more fun now because it's more relaxed. I don't know if it's as good as it used to be, but there's a lot less tension involved, you know, and there's a lot more like direct communication, and there's a lot more confidence in saying how I feel or how I want something to be without walking on eggshells, you know? So I think it's just the motivation now is like, I'm not even really motivated by touring or playing shows at the moment. I'm motivated by like making music, you know? And I'm not motivated by money, obviously, because that ship may have sailed, but making music that I want to hear is pretty much the motivation. And Golden Grease, the motivation right now is that these are guys that I grew up with. So these guys I've known for 30 years at this point. And so for us, it's like this thing of like, we've always been talking about this for so long, and we've been playing shows together for so long. So now we're just all in the same band, you know. Eventually we just became a band after like being in different bands and knowing each other for so long, you know.
Yeah, and it shows, you know, you guys obviously are having a good time. Well, both bands are really fun to watch live. And it's pretty obvious that you all get along really well behind the scenes as well.
Exactly.
Especially these days.
Yes. Finally.
So how do you do you fit being in those bands in with your other stuff, or is it the other way around? Are you fitting a band, or are you fitting Zig Zags and Golden Grease into your schedule of being a real estate agent, etc., or is it the other way around, or is it just like a hodgepodge mix?
Man, I'll tell you what. For years I fit everything else into being in the band.
Yeah.
You know, and to financial ruin. You know, it's like I just like I've said no to so many things because of not even using the band almost as an excuse maybe that I couldn't work twice as hard, but like I've just like, nah, I can't do that. I've got a show. Like I can't do this thing here. Like, I mean, it's the being in the band has like probably kept me from having like an actual career, which is a good thing because I don't want to have an actual career. I don't want to have a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
But it's been stressful because of money. But at the same time, it's like it's forced me to like figure out a lot of shit, you know, because I don't even, there's more things that that are on this list of things that I do, you know, like I was telling you, we went to Chicago and we worked at Riot Fest and we built all these sets, you know, so it's like now I'm learning how to like work and build stuff with some friends of mine. It's a whole other fucking story, but like I've just always had to find like acting. It's like, well, I'm an actor, but like, okay, I've done craft services, I've done art department, I've done food styling, I've done every fucking job except for like the technical stuff on sets, like camera guy, you know, director, whatever, DP, or director, you know, any of the non-technical, anything that involves picking something up, I can do that, you know.
Yeah.
So like, I've had to figure out ways to survive, you know, because of playing music as opposed to getting a real job, you know.
So it sounds like basically you love being in a band, being in multiple bands, playing music in general, and the other stuff is a necessary evil to a certain extent to be able to do that, and it's just a mix of things that you don't absolutely hate and don't put you in a
I mean, I think I
situation.
like all those things, you know, and I've done stand-up comedy and failed at that, you know, a number of times, and yet I still secretly go and do it sometimes, you know, just to feel dirty. And but yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's just I don't know, what the fuck was the question again? Sorry.
I think we answered.
Yeah, I think we answered it. Yeah.
Okay, so being in a band now in 2024, how does that compare in your mind? You know a lot about music history and a lot about what it would have been like to have been in a band in the 60s, 70s, 80s, pre-internet era, and now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on where would Zig Zags be? Because I have my thoughts on this in a pre-internet era versus now, and or do you think now is a better time or a worse time to be trying to be in a functional band?
Well, I also have to think about it being in a band when you're 24, being in a band versus when you're 44, you know, the same band, you know, because I think I started this band when I was like 31 or something like that, and I'm 44 now, but I was around a lot of music and in bands way pre-internet, because I started playing in bands when I was like 12, you know, and I didn't even have an internet until I was like 16 or whatever, 1996, you know, and even then it was like the porn would just take like forever to come down the screen, you know? So it was like super,
the anticipation,
super slow. You had to work for it, you know, and I think that you know, the thing that I liked back in the day, man, was I would be walking, and maybe this is just being a young person too. I'd be walking down the street in Seattle, you know, and somebody would say like, "Oh man, there's like this show tonight, like you should go to this show or whatever," and then I would find out about stuff like person to person, you know.
Yeah.
And now with Instagram and stuff like that, and you find out about stuff, but a lot of times I'll see a show on there and I'll be like, "Oh cool," and then I'll say, "Oh, that was posted 3 days ago and I missed that fucking show." So it's like, there's so much going on now. There's so many, I mean, in LA especially, it's just like there's so many fucking shows going on. There's so many bands playing, and I end up like missing so much stuff too, you know.
Sure.
But I think that, you know, and back in the day, you know, I was like booking shows and tours on a payphone, you know.
Yeah.
And this is not that long ago, you know. I'm not talking about early 80s, I'm not talking about Black Flag when they're like booking stuff, but like even Book Your Own Fucking Life was around, which was like a magazine that like had people's names and contact information, and me and my buddy Kevin were living in Eastern Washington, and we would call bands, we would write letters to bands saying like, please come to town and play a show, you know, and a lot of it worked out that way, you know.
Yeah.
So you just had to kind of try harder, but also there was like so much mystery to it too. I talked about this on stage the other night when we opened up for Escapism. So like Ian Savonius, you know, he's in the Nation of Ulysses, and when I was a kid, I ordered a bunch of punk records from Anti.
Yeah.
Remember Anti?
Of course, yeah.
And they didn't have what I wanted, but what I ordered, so they sent me this Nation of Ulysses record, and it was CD. And I'd never heard them before, and it has trumpet on it, and I was so confused because I was only listening to hardcore and metal and all this stuff, and I was very confused by this music at the time. But I only had like 4 or 5 CDs, so I listened to that record so much, and I just fell in love with it and became like one of my all-time favorite, you know. And through that I found like Rites of Spring and some of the other like Discord bands that I really dug, you know.
Yep.
So it was like, you know, you'd look at the album cover or whatever, and it was like this mystery of like who these guys are, you know, where are they from, and what does this sound like, you know, or like you get fooled by like the Santana Abraxas record. You're like, oh, this looks fucking awesome, and it's not. You know? So
I'll take point with that. I think Abraxas is a great record, but very different than 12-Point Program to Destroy America.
Yeah.
And maybe doesn't sound exactly like what you would think it would sound.
Right.
Especially if you're expecting Bitches Brew or something.
Yeah, it still fools me to this day. I go, oh, you know.
Yeah.
So
I know what you mean, though.
Yeah, no. So I think it's different if you're 24 and you're in a band right now. All this stuff seems fucking normal to you, like Instagram and all this stuff.
Yeah.
People have told me to like start a TikTok channel.
Yeah.
I can't do it, man. Like,
yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like even like right now, what we're doing, it's like that's so much like thought, and like I can't get another fucking app, you know, and I can't put myself out there in another way.
Yeah.
But I do like the communal aspect of it, and I do like that like when I post something, people will put stupid comments on there, or I can just always make a joke about something, you know. I love that part of it, you know.
Yeah. Do you think that Zig Zags is potentially a more successful band in a different era? I think that's more the direction of the question, although I do like what you had to say there. Is Zig Zags in 1985 a bigger band, and does Zig Zags have an easier time, let's just put it bluntly, making money and being successful than they do in 2024?
No, because like I'm not a very good guitar player. It'd be harder. Like the audience is way less forgiving back then than they are now, as far as like musicianship goes in that kind of music. I mean,
well, first of all, Zig Zags have come a very, very long
Sure,
way and are
yeah.
a much different band now. Go listen to Strange Masters right now versus the first 2 albums, which is where the majority of those songs first were released. It's night and day difference. I have been watching Zig Zags play since the beginning, I think, and it's a wholly different type of band, and I've been on board ever since. I really love the progression because you haven't taken it to a level of sterility that's uninteresting. It's just gotten more and more bombastic, more and more technical, more shreddy. Like, you're a way more talented guitar player than you were 11 years ago.
Thank you.
Practice makes better. But still, Zig Zags right now, I think, could hold their own.
Oh, right now, yeah.
With Anthrax or any one of like the more like kind of party themed or party oriented like thrash bands.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if we had a time machine, then we could probably take this like version of the band, shave about 20 years off of us, make us that good, and then move us back 50 years, 40 years, whatever. And it would probably do all right.
I guess the real motivation behind me asking that question is, do you think just generally, is it harder for bands, especially in the rock world, to make a go of this and actually make a living out of being a musician in the 21st century?
You know what I thought of actually just now is one of the things that is different is we sell a fuck ton of t-shirts on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
That never existed, you know. Back in the day, like, we never even had merch, you know, that wasn't even a thing, you know. So selling records and t-shirts and merch online has been huge, as far as like, if I do a new t-shirt design, I can sell like 50 of them in a weekend, and that'll pay for all those shirts and another batch that I can then sell at shows, you know.
Yeah.
So that helps out tremendously, you know. I think that we've seen, since COVID, we've seen the price of tickets get really crazy high.
Yeah.
And the value of music get really low. So it's like, you know, we're giving our music, everyone's giving their music away on streaming stuff, so you got to make up that money somehow. I was like, why the fuck are tickets so high? And it's like, oh, because if you're at a certain level, you know, if you're Beyonce or whoever these people are, they're not making money necessarily on streaming or whatever. I mean, they are, but compared to me, they are, but not what they used to. If it was CDs,
right?
You know,
yeah.
It's not fucking Thriller or Back in Black, you know, where these guys are selling 100 million copies of a CD, you know, because they kept changing the format, and every time they changed the format, they could sell more shit, you know,
Totally.
Until it got to the point where the format wasn't worth anything.
Yeah.
You know? Have you seen that movie, The Substance?
Not yet.
Okay. It's like that. The music industry just kept morphing and morphing until it's like this fucking monster that like nobody wants, you know?
Yeah. And that's a whole other subject.
Sure.
We could go, I think we
Yeah.
could talk for literally hours just about the state of the music industry. Sure. Well, I'll just say that I think, and this is mostly just to be a compliment to the band, because we can't change the state of affairs. I think
Elon's gonna do it. We're gonna figure it out. He said that was one of the number one things he's gonna do, is he's gonna trim the fat, and then he's gonna put fucking me and Sean and Jeff in a fucking capsule, get us back to 1984, get us a practice space. Fucking here we go, a little Camaro.
Hell yeah! Hopefully y'all aren't the only ones that can get in that capsule, because I'd like to join you.
But hopefully when we come out on the other side, we're not all fucked up and weird, and like it's not like, you know.
Not any more than you already are.
Exactly. Didn't go wrong. No, sorry. Go ahead. I am bad at taking a compliment, obviously.
I know that about
Yeah.
you. But all I was gonna say, for people watching who haven't heard Zig Zags, I think Zig Zags is one of the greatest bands on the planet, and it's really unfortunate to me that because of the way that the music industry works now, it's impossible almost for a band like Zig Zags to actually be able to do the band and make a living from it.
Right.
Even though, in my opinion, the way you all work and what you have to put into it to present what you do on stage and on record deserves being paid for in a way that Metallica, well, maybe not Metallica beyond 1990 got
Metal
paid.
Church, not Metallica.
But yeah, some very, very well-known metal band has been paid and can now, you know, in their older age, retire from it. You know?
I mean, look at Dead Moon. You know, Dead Moon is, because I'm from Clackamas, Oregon originally, and that's where Dead Moon's from. And I didn't even know about them until I was 21, and I saw them play in Seattle in like 2000, you know. And then I became obsessed with that band, and that band's like one of my favorite bands of all time. Those guys are so much more popular now that Fred's dead, and that they don't play, that they're not a band anymore than they were. Like, you know, back in the day, I would see Dead Moon shirts and stuff in San Francisco. That was the only place I ever saw anything related to them. They were like a cult band there, but like they're so much more popular now.
Yeah,
you know, that it's just crazy, you know. Yeah. And I felt that way about them, you know. I felt like this is criminal.
Yeah, they deserve more than they got.
Yeah,
based on how great they were and the amount of effort that they put into it for as long as they did, especially. But you know, that's how the cookie crumbles.
That's how it goes. That's rock and roll.
And they would never have played the game that at least these days you need to play, much less have played the game. You know, I mean, we've all seen some kind of monster, and we've seen behind the scenes of what it's like to be in Metallica. Like that, being in a band on that level, probably it loses a lot of the. It loses a lot for the people in the band. Once you get to a certain level, there's a lot of things you just can't do.
Right. It changes you, you know. You turn into a weird person that can't relate to, you know.
And then bottom line is your record's successful. All the pressure's on you to make the next record be just as successful, and you have to do whatever you think you did on that last one again or better.
Right.
And that's almost impossible a lot of times.
For sure, it's definitely impossible. I was talking to a friend today who's an actor who's like struggling and doing some stuff, and it's just like there's this sort of depression when you get to the end of like making a record or when the record comes out, because then you're like, fuck, I gotta like pull that magic trick again.
Yeah.
I gotta do it again now.
It's a lot, and a lot of people don't think about that because for every rise to stardom, or even every rise from nothing to something, means that there's a fall that is inevitable at some point. Even if you're just, I won't name any names, but a band like in the indie world that becomes a pitchfork darling or whatever you want to call it, that is first of all, it's hard to do in the first place. It's hard to even get to that point where people are taking note of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Then it's almost impossible to sustain for any length of time, and the decline from that height has to be really, really difficult. So I guess in some ways, never getting there and being able to always do what you want to do and stay true to it and have even just a modicum of success can be seen as a more rewarding way of going about it.
I think about that kind of stuff a lot. I think about like, a band like AC/DC that, they always say like, we made the same album. There's a dumb joke about making the same album 13 times, and then Angus Young said, no, we made it 14 times. And I think about that.
Yeah.
In regards to Zig Zags, I think about this. And I think about Ian MacKaye saying, instead of trying to change the sound of your band, just start a new band, And I think about like indie rock bands, how they have to like, you'll see these bands or whatever, like, I don't know these guys, but like that band Fiddler, like they changed their sound completely on this. I haven't heard it, but I just from fucking looking online, all these people are like pissed that they like went in one direction. Now they're back to doing whatever they're doing. Yeah. So that's cool. God bless them. There's this drive to like evolve, and I've thought about it, and I'm like, I can't evolve Zig Zags. I can't change it. Like every time I come up with something that's like, it doesn't sound like a Zig Zag song, it doesn't have to be all the same, but there's like a thing where it's like, even this new album we're working on, I was like, I want it to be fucking thrash metal, blah, blah, blah. I want it to be crazy fast. It didn't end up that way, but it sounds like a Zig Zags record, and it has 10 like all the songs are they sound like Zig Zags, but they're different songs. They're not, you hear records and a lot of them sound the same, the whole album sounds the same. But I will say that we have it kind of easier than like these pitchfork bands, because they have to like basically evolve and change and kind of like get better, whereas like we're like a genre. Like it's like if you're a metal band, it's like you're a horror movie. Like no one wants you to not make horror movies anymore. No one wants you to not make metal. You have to change. You have to get better. You have to do things that for yourself to feel fulfilled. But like, dude, I'm not gonna put out an acoustic Zig Zags record or like or start rapping. Why would I do that? It'd be insane. But I'll say this. I mean, the point you made about thinking about what to do to make it to the next level, that thought has never crossed my mind. Yeah. To my own detriment, I would imagine. You know what I mean? But that's never crossed my mind. Like, how can we make this band more popular? Yeah. Other than like, oh, we gotta post more on Instagram, or we make a music video, but like not like what can we do? What's the marketing? It's never been offered to us as a choice, and I've never even thought about it in my mind of like, how do I make this band more popular?
And I think that is a big reason why people like me that have liked Zig Zags since the beginning are still on board with Zig Zags, and you keep building this small but loyal following.
Right, and I think all the bands that I like probably are the same way, and I don't think Dead Moon was sitting around in a fucking cabin in Oregon going like, oh man, we should get on TikTok, or whatever the fuck, we should cut our hair.
But it definitely has happened many times in the past, and usually has not worked out for most bands. Although I guess there are the exceptions to the rule. the biggest Green Day record is not a Green Day record that sounds like Kerplunk or whatever.
Right.
You know what I
What's
mean?
the biggest Green Day record?
I don't know. I would guess American Idiot. That
Okay,
seems
yeah,
like-
right.
That was the real, like, can Green Day get any bigger? That really, there's a freaking musical.
Right, it's on Broadway. I'm trying to think, is there a band, what's the, like, craziest example you can think of like, a band that, like, just totally nosedived their career with an album? Like, I know it's out there, and I'm sure someone who's watching this is just screaming at the screen right now, going like, fucking blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to think.
I mean, it's funny to think about, like, just because we've been talking about Metallica so much, you think about, you know, Load and Reload and stuff, and it's weird because I don't think anybody that really loves the early days of Metallica is a huge fan of those records, but those records are the ones that really broke Metallica into the mainstream.
I'll tell you what, I love Load. Like, only like 4 songs on it, but like, dude, I've gotten so into that. Like, driving to play baseball, like, I just feel like a fucking, like, regular old man listening to that record, like, playing, like, playing, like, on a baseball team or whatever. When the Black Album came out, I got into Metallica really early. I was into Metallica, I'm so cool, because I had friends who had older brothers, and I was, like, had moved to a new town. I didn't know anyone, and they were, like, into metal. And I was into Metallica heavily when I was 8 years old, and I was heavily into Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and Master of Puppets. And
Ahead of your time, Jed.
and Justice for All, which is probably my second favorite album of all time of Metallica. When Black Album came out, I didn't like it, and I remember when it came out, because it came out in like 1990, or I remember I was like at a pool party, and no one that I hung out with, they were like listening to like Bell Biv DeVoe or like, you know, these like TLC, you know, and I'd try to act like I knew what that was. And this was like when Stone Temple Pilots and Nirvana and these bands were coming out, and I was still really into metal, but I was kind of like a closeted metal guy, but I didn't like Black Album, so I kind of didn't listen to anything after that record. And then now I heard it, I was like, God, that record's pretty fucking cool. You know, there's some cool stuff on it.
Yeah, and that happens all the time, where a band changes directions and becomes the biggest version of themselves that they've ever been because they made a more palatable pop version.
Back in Black is AC/DC's most famous record.
Right, yeah, of course.
But by far.
Yeah.
And then it's not even the original singer.
Yeah.
And it's a great record, but the records before that are so killer, man.
Yeah.
Like, and no one knows like High Voltage, you know, no one knows fucking Power Age, you know, like those records are so fucking killer. And then Back in Black comes out and everyone's just like, oh, this is what I like, you know. It's like, it's wild, you know. And that was probably just because of the time, and you know.
Definitely. And then there's other examples of bands like Pink Floyd that had, you know, 2 full-length albums before their, like, what was their major breakthrough that takes the band to the top of the pops, like the biggest band in the world.
Yeah.
And it has almost nothing in common with the previous 2 records. And again, not even the same front person or main songwriter.
Yeah.
So Ian MacKay's advice is, although creatively super valid, and I love that, you know, I remember reading in maybe Our Band Could Be Your Life or something, that he would be upset and maybe actually like put on the writer that you could not say that people from Fugazi were in Minor Threat or any previous bands. It was, you were presenting Fugazi as if anybody had a hard time understanding what that was at the time.
Yeah.
Although maybe in the very early days it was a little bit of a hurdle. It obviously you know, wasn't a problem after a while.
I think people were confused by Fugazi at the time. Fugazi was one of the first shows that I ever saw, and I didn't even know who they were. And they were playing in the town, and I was just going to a show to like stage dive. That's all I cared about. And I saw them, and it blew my mind, you know. But I remember Ian MacKay saying that like people were like, "Oh, are these guys ska?" Like blah blah blah. Which I didn't even know enough about ska to like think they were ska. I was just like, oh, these guys are like cool, you know. But they also frowned upon the stage diving thing, and that was I was bummed because I was just like, that's why I was at the show, was like to just jump off the stage. You know?
They existed solely to stop meatheads like you from coming to shows and ruining everybody else's good time.
You can't have all ages shows and no stage diving. It's like it's like a weird thing. It's like pie without ice cream or something, you know?
Yeah, for some people.
Pie without
So we got very, very off topic where we.
I tend to
from
do
where
that,
we
Lance.
started.
I don't know.
No, it's good. It's called a weave, I've heard.
Okay.
So that's all of that said. Do you have advice for younger people forming bands on how to keep a band sustainable? Because obviously, in order to continue to do a band, to be in a band, and play in a band is what I mean to say, and be able to justify spending your time doing it, it has to pay some dividends, right? Because otherwise you just have to get a regular ass job and you no longer have time to be in that band anymore. Is there, from your experience doing it the way you've done it, is there guidance that you would give somebody who's younger who wants to be in a band that actually like wants to make a go of it and try to make a living making music?
I think you just have to have honesty between the people, and you know, these are things that, you know, I wish I knew earlier, which is exactly what you're asking the question, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, for me, the thing is, it's always been try to be with cool people that you get along with.
Yeah.
And I wish that I had been cooler and easier to get along with a lot of the times. It would have saved me a lot of aggravation, you know. The musicianship, like, will come later through hard. I think I'm an example of like what you said about being a good guitar player. It's like, I'm not a natural at all. I'm like a pretty hard worker, and I've figured out a lot of stuff on my own, you know, just through trial and error. And there's probably, if I'd taken lessons or whatever, or was a little bit more diligent about practicing. I'm a hard worker when it comes to making stuff. I'm not a hard worker when it comes to just sitting there and practicing, you know. Yeah. So I've always just written my own songs. I can't play anyone else's music. I can only play my own stuff. So I'd say, be with people that you like, and also get on the same page, and don't be afraid to be like honest about like what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, because I think a lot of times I would keep information from people because I'd be like, oh, I'm afraid to like tell these guys how many fucking tour dates we're gonna go on because they're gonna freak out, you know, because it's people,
and bail before you even get out there.
People will bail, and you know, and it's also just like, I get it, you know, it's like people are worried about money and what they're gonna come back to, you know.
That's the thing a lot of people that aren't in bands don't think about. In order to be out on the road playing shows for people in different cities that you don't live in, you have to forego any money you might have made working your regular job at home, and you're also spending a ton of money on gas and lodging and food and so on and so forth. Like, it's a really, really difficult kind of thing to work out financially.
I never had that fear, stupidly. You know, I always thought, I'll come back, I'll figure it out, you know, blah, blah. But I didn't understand how anyone else could have that fear, you know, like, so I was like, what do you mean you don't want to go on tour? Like, this is the best thing in the world. Like, we're going to sleep on this fucking floor. Like, this guy's girlfriend's going to get mad. Like, it's going to be hilarious. You know, years from now, we're going to be fucking on Lance's podcast talking about all the stupid shit we did when we fell down that flight of stairs with an Ampeg SVT. You know, so like, all that stuff just made so much sense to me. I was never afraid of it, you know, and I'm not like the most crazy road dog. I know like tons of guys that tour way more than I have, but and now I am afraid of it, but back then I wasn't, you know. Yeah. So it's like being on the same page with people, because having that kind of unspoken, you know, anxiety of like what people want to do and what people can do and what they're comfortable with, you know.
Yeah.
These days, if I was to start over, I'd be like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to tour all the time. Like, let's all fucking move into a practice space together, and we'll sleep there if we have to, you know? Because when you're 20, you can endure anything.
Totally.
You know?
Absolutely.
And I've seen bands that did that, you know?
Yeah, of course.
And they have wild breakups.
And honestly, that's not bad advice for people trying to be in a band, like keep not necessarily live in your practice space,
Yeah.
but keep your expenses as low as possible, because you're not going to make a lot of money doing this. You're probably going to have you should be having a lot of fun doing it,
Yeah.
and you're probably not going to make a lot of money. And the only way you can come out on top in that equation is by not spending money unnecessarily on like an expensive apartment in LA or whatever.
Right.
Like, what are you going to do? You're paying for your rent while you're out on the road, paying for another place to stay, or sleeping on the floor somewhere. That's idiotic, right?
I mean, I talked to Dwyer about this some years ago or something like that.
John Dwyer from the OC.
Yeah, I just remember a conversation we had where he was like, kind of, you know, because I'm just like, oh man, you're out there all the time, like blah blah, you built this thing, and you know, we were just talking about that, and he was like, well, I had, you know, $300 rent in San Francisco, rent control, so it's like I could tour forever and make $300 DJing or whatever, and pay that rent, you know, and it's like,
or rent it out to somebody,
or whatever
for more. If you're in that lucky situation.
Exactly, what, you know, so, but he was like almost saying that as a like self-deferential thing of like, I'm not that badass, I had this one thing that kind of helped make it make sense, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is that I feel like it's important to be in like a city like LA, if you really want to like play music, you know? I know how hard it is, like if you're not in a major city, you know, it's possible, but it's just, here we do have like really good musicians. We have tons of bands. We have tons of cool people. I really like LA, the scene, and everybody, and all ages too. Like, I mean, there's so many people that I know that are younger than me that play music all the time.
Yeah.
But it is so fucking expensive to be here.
Yeah.
That I don't know how people, even practice spaces, everything is just like crazy expensive, you know. So I don't know how you start out here like and pay your rent and go on tour and do the thing, you know.
Stuff, for sure.
But I'd say that people are, the bands that you have here, like the quality of the musicians and the quality of the bands are good enough that they can like have an audience, you know.
Yeah, it's bananas.
Yeah.
It's absolutely bananas, the amount of amazing bands and musicians that live in the city. It's awesome. All right, so getting back to records. Since, obviously Permanent Records is and always has been a record store, we are also now a live music venue and a bar.
Yeah.
But how important is vinyl records, our vinyl records at the merch table?
Well, it's super important because...
or on Bandcamp, as you mentioned, like
right.
selling stuff on
No, I mean, right now most of the vinyl that we sell is like directly linked to the label, Riding Easy Records. So it's like if you order a record from us, unless it's one of the older ones that I have on hand, you know, you're gonna get it from the label, but it's still coming through Bandcamp, you know. But, you know, t-shirts, vinyl, I mean, this is all, without that stuff, there's really no way to survive on the road, you know, for our band, you know. And everyone sells merch these days, you know, and that, I don't think merch used to be such a big deal, you know. I think it's because it's like you can't download an actual physical copy of a record, and you can't download an actual a t-shirt, you know. So it's like it's sort of this like symbiotic relationship between the band and the audience, you know. It's like I'm always surprised at how much merch people buy, you know, and how supportive people are for it. And especially like when we go to like Germany and stuff, it's like people buy tons of fucking records and tons of t-shirts, you know. So it's hugely important, you know. But I will say that, like, as you know more than anyone, it's like it takes up a lot of space, it's heavy, it's expensive to ship.
Yeah.
So it's just it's sort of I mean, I've always loved records, you know, like I started collecting records in high school, and I was just always like, you know, it's that cliche of like putting it on and then like laying in bed and like looking at the cover and reading all the liner notes and all this stuff, you know.
Yeah,
I've always
there's
loved
nothing
that. Every Zig Zags record has the lyrics in it. I've always like wanted to include lyrics, even if they're shitty, you know, whatever, just because like I remember like reading lyrics that way, you know, like,
Of course, yeah.
so all that, so yeah, it's hugely important, you know.
Do you think, I guess you already kind of touched on this, it seems pretty obvious to me that because of the fact that selling merch at the merch table is so important for the existence of any, or the sustainability of any band, that the vinyl resurgence has obviously helped dramatically, right? So like I would imagine that like in that interim period of like whatever, say 2000 to 2006 or 2008, probably, I don't know what you're selling at the merch table aside from t-shirts, because most people don't have turntables again yet.
You're selling CDs.
Yeah, well, but are people buying CDs in 2000 to and now?
Not now. I mean, not in my, but in 2000 to 2006, I worked at Sub Pop in Seattle. We sold so many fucking CDs, and I remember like putting out like that band The Shins and some of the other like bigger bands. We were like farming the vinyl out to like smaller labels that just wanted to like put out vinyl, vinyl versions, and that was like an afterthought,
Right.
And up until like probably 2004 maybe or something like that, and then vinyl started, and we were like, oh fuck, some of these labels can't even keep up with the demand for vinyl, so like Sub Pop got the rights back to some of the records and did vinyl versions of things, but CDs were huge then, and then right before like Napster and all this stuff came out.
That's what I'm talking
iPods
about. That's what I'm talking about. Whatever, let's not say the years 2000 to 2006, but like after the decline of the CD, where like it was, no one was buying CDs essentially.
Right.
And before the resurgence of vinyl to where it is nowadays, where lots and lots of people have turntables, or even if they don't have turntables, are still out there buying records. Like, yeah, I guess this kind of, what are you selling at a merch table if you don't have the vinyl record at the table post being able to sell a CD to anybody? Because they're like, I would buy this CD, but I don't buy CDs anymore.
Dude, like I said, man, I mean, from, I graduated high school in 1998. I had been putting on shows in a small town. I moved to Seattle immediately. I went to thousands of shows from like 98 to, I had a fake ID, so I went from 98 to like 2007 when I moved down here. I went to like almost every night. I went and saw shows in Seattle. I don't even fucking remember merch tables. I don't even remember people selling merch, honestly. I mean, I'm sure they were. I never even bought merch.
And to be fair, like at that age too, I went to tons of shows, but I rarely bought anything because I didn't have any money.
Yeah, also I just wanted to buy fucking booze, Like, I'm not gonna buy a record if I gotta get 2 more beers.
I guess different strokes for different folks.
But I also think too, it's a metal thing too.
Yeah.
Like the metal and the punk thing, it's way more merch. It's way more about like the look and being part of that, scene wise. Because it's like, I mean, wearing a Modest Mouse shirt, I'll just push you into a fucking ditch or whatever, But if you're, it's like, and don't get me wrong, I like Modest Mouse. I'm just saying, like, it's not the toughest shirt in the world,
Or even on a more mainstream level, you see, and maybe these people have these T-shirts at home, but you don't see people walking around in public wearing Taylor Swift shirts.
God, no. I
mean,
mean,
you do. Like, you could go to Target and see a Misfits T-shirt right now, probably.
Yeah. I mean, you see someone wearing a Taylor Swift shirt at like fucking Disney World or something like that.
Maybe. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But like, especially like, I always think about this too. Like, if you're like a singer-songwriter, you can't make merch. You can't just put someone's fucking name on your shirt. It's goofy.
You can, and I remember my first example of that, and Ty's not a singer-songwriter, but I remember seeing his T-shirts, and I was like, I don't want to wear a T-shirt with just another dude's real name on it. Like, that seems strange to me.
I think it's weird when guys wear like sports jerseys with another man's name on there. It's just like
a strange part of that culture for sure, but
right
on. So,
especially when you can wear a Motorhead shirt.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I have an Indian Larry shirt on, but
hell yeah. I should have worn my Zig Zags t-shirt. One of my many Zig Zags.
You have your own,
t-shirts.
yeah.
This is the uniform.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. I don't think about what I'm gonna wear every day. I know exactly what I'm gonna wear.
This guy, because I wear a Zig Zag shirt on stage sometimes, and because of that thing where it's like I would see like Metallica and these bands wearing like their own shirt, and that was like a metal thing. That was like the only genre of music where you could wear your own. gear, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember this guy, I was at the merch table and I was wearing the Zig Zag shirt, and this guy came up and he was just like, oh, that's odd. Like, and I was like, what? And he's like, oh, you're wearing your own t-shirt, you know? And I was like, yeah, it's like a uniform. It's like I'm going to work. I'm like wearing my, you know, I was like, it's like, you know, when you wear a shirt that says Subway on it.
Yeah.
He's like, what? He's like, I don't work at Subway. I was like, I know. I'm joking.
Where do you work? It's like that.
Yeah.
That's a funny one. I love asking that question, actually. What are your thoughts on people in the, well, I mean, I guess we know your thought on it. Is it, what are your thoughts on people wearing their own band shirt, on stage or otherwise?
I think I'm guilty of it on both accounts. And I've done it like on accident, like because I have these hats, you know, and I've thrown one on like walking out the door to walk the dog or whatever, and then I felt weird because I've like seen people like go like, oh, that guy's in the band and he's wearing that hat, you know. I think on stage it's cool, it's a look.
Yeah.
I think in public, just going to Target, it's kind of weird. Like,
I think I'll agree with that totally, and I think the worst case scenario of wearing your own band t-shirt out in public is if people are like, I fucking love that band, but they don't recognize that you're in the band, or they're like, what's that band? Like, I've never heard of them, and you're like, well, I'm in the band, and it's just like that awkward moment, right? But another thing, I used to be totally anti that.
Right.
I thought it was lame. I thought it was lame to wear my own Permanent Records t-shirt.
Yeah.
Probably for the same reason.
Sure.
Stupid business move, because if you're not going to wear your own logo, then like, why should you expect anybody else to? If you're not proud enough of the thing that you've created and you're promoting on a day-to-day basis to wear it yourself, like, then why should anyone else?
I wear a name tag at Home Depot that says like realtor on it. Walk around.
But then I thought one day that it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, you know what? I bet like the guys in the Clash like probably only had their own t-shirt on because they didn't in the early days just didn't have anything else.
Sure.
Like they had merch from selling it at the table, and they ran out of shirts because it got all ripped up in the pit or whatever.
I've had to do that. Yeah.
And you have to wear whatever is available.
Put on one because your shirt got thrashed on stage or whatever. Yeah.
It's home economics 101.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm into it. I think it's cool, man. I think I think Modest Mouse should wear their own shirts. I think Taylor Swift should wear a Taylor Swift shirt. I think. Yeah.
Well, hell not.
Yeah, I think she should do it.
If she won't, why should she expect anyone else?
I don't know. I think she should.
Absolutely. We're putting it out there. I think it's official now. It's okay to wear your own band t-shirt.
I agree, for sure.
Since you have been all over Europe and you've toured internationally, are there certain record stores that stand out in your mind as like, wow, this place is mind-blowing, and you think about it every now and again?
Well, I mean, there's that Helvet store in Oslo, you know, which
it's an all black metal store.
Yeah, and I just love that place because that was like where Euronymous and like Mayhem and all those guys got their start, and they still have like the basement where they have like their like a bench press set up, and there's just like someone had taken like a piece of copy paper with like some masking tape and just wrote on it Euronymous exercise equipment and put that on there, you know.
Wow.
And then it has the black metal scrawled on the wall, you know.
Yeah.
But what I loved about that place too was like they just had these binders filled with like photos, like photo prints of like local black metal bands, you know, playing, and they were like $5 each, and they weren't like bands you knew, you know, they were just random local bands, you know, just all, and you could just buy these photos out of this book, and they had like crazy t-shirts and crazy records and stuff, so that was really cool. I mean, my friends Dean and Tom in Seattle have this place called Hex Induction, which is a rad little record store in Seattle that we always go by and just more so even to visit them. But the store is cool because they kind of have the same. What I always liked about your store and what they kind of do too is it's kind of like you guys are definitely like, I mean, you have a lot of rare stuff that's like crazy expensive, but like there's a lot of stuff that's sort of priced to move, you know?
Yeah.
I don't like a record store that's like trying to hold on to everything. It's like sell it and then get new stuff in there, you know? Like I don't like that thing of like, I saw someone sent me this thing the other day. It was like an Instagram reel, or it was like, how do you know if a record store is overpriced? Because they have like Fleetwood Mac Rumors for over $20, you know, whatever. Back in the day, that was like $1 record, you know, all day long. So like I don't like to go into these record stores where it's like they don't have prices on the stuff. You got to bring it up to the counter. The guy's like, "I'll look it up," you know, like that kind of.
That's
like,
the worst.
That's the worst, you know.
You want to do my job for me? That's what they're saying to you. Come on in, do my job for me, and then I'll charge you more than I should.
Right.
And you'll leave empty-handed, and I get to keep all my records unless you're going to be a moron and pay a premium. You know?
I'm trying to remember like the names of some of the what's the place in Chicago, like Dusty Grooves?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a place we would always hit.
Yeah, it's a great shop.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember some of the names of the places. I mean, it's always just a way to like kill time, you know. It's like,
of course, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the name of the game, really. You got to like fill your time on the road by doing something interesting that's not particularly expensive.
Yeah.
And just digging through records doesn't have to be expensive. Going to a museum is expensive.
Right. We would also go, I remember this one time, we would go to record stores all the time and we would try to sell some of our, you know, merch, vinyl or whatever.
No.
And I remember, I think it was a place in San Antonio called like Hog Wild or something like that. We went in there and it's funny because they would always, you know, I'm sure you've had this, but like, they would always give us a bunch of attitude. Like, I'd be like, "Hey man, we're on tour. Like, we was wondering if you guys wanted to buy some records, you know?" And they're like, no. And I'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I get it, man." And then they'd be like, "What band are you in?" And I'd be like, "We're called Zig Zags." "Oh, Zig Zags. Oh yeah, man, come here." Like, you know, and then they would buy a bunch of stuff generally, which is cool, you know. But I remember doing that there, and they were just like not having it. And then when I said the band, they were like, "Oh, cool!" Like, and then they bought a ton of stuff from us, you know. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's rare for sure because I've been in that situation where so many times where touring bands and you're like, I would love to help you out, but this is a shop, not a charity.
Yeah.
Me buying your record means that I'm just going to have that record sitting in my bins forever and it's not going to sell. So why don't I just give you $20 for lunch? You know, it's really what it's all about for most bands.
Dude.
It is nice when a band that's really great that you actually like comes in and they have some limited edition merch that you can buy and then resell that will actually.
It's the equivalent of like a band playing a show with a band and then they want to trade merch with you.
Yeah, of course.
It's like, fuck, man, like, I'm not gonna wear your shirt, man. And it's just like, fuck, like, God. And then that's like, and then in my mind, I'm just like, I'm just giving away $20 and I'm taking on some garbage that I don't want, you know, like, I mean, it does happen where it's like, it's cool, but like, bands, wait, am I in camera here? I feel like I'm here. Don't ask the other band to trade. You look at the green thing. Don't ask the other band to trade merch with you. That's a big rule for younger bands, I would say.
That's a solid rule. You know, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, having seen a lot of really great bands perform here that are just missing some certain elements. Like, I see the potential in this band. I'm like, a lot of bands need a coach. They need some advice from somebody who's been around for a really long time. And I'm like, I would be a really great band coach.
Yeah, you would be.
I don't want to be in a band anymore.
Right.
I've done that. I tried it. It was fun while it lasted. It's not for me anymore. But I would love to teach promising up-and-coming bands how to do it and how to do it well. And that is a good piece of advice.
Yeah, be like a manager. But yeah, I've thought about that too. Like I don't care what I look like anymore. But back in the day, I would be like, you know, don't have like, if you're gonna do music, don't have. This is what I want to be a coach for. I want to be a coach for older bands that are reunited, which is like,
that could be good.
Do not have gear that was made after the songs were written. You know, don't roll in with like some fucking digital shit and try to like play me your like, you know, obscure song from 1969 or whatever.
Be as authentic as possible, and I think that advice is true for younger bands as it is for older bands. Come to the table with a show that's authentic for what people are expecting.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to show up looking completely different than what you look like in the photos that, you know, the people know you for, you're not going to succeed. It's not going to go well.
It's like Tinder.
Exactly. That's a great analogy.
Do not catfish the audience.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
That happens far too often.
That's funny.
Do you have any, so as far as record collecting goes, are you like actively seeking a top one? Is there like a record that in your mind you've been listening to digitally or whatever that you'd be like, man, if I saw that on vinyl and it was like reasonably priced, I would totally buy that?
Man, I don't know. I mean, a lot of that stuff is stuff that I've been able to get over the years, especially because of like the reissues. So like back in the early 2000s when like a Karma was like reissuing all those records, you know, and I don't remember who I knew, but I knew somebody, and I was trading all these like Sub Pop promos and things that I got with other people at different labels, and so I was just like stacking like reissue records, you know. So I was stacking like Buffalo from Australia, and I'm trying to think like Relatively Clean Rivers, all those kinds of records, you know, the stuff that like, this is even before I found out about like when you could download all that stuff, like Mega Upload or whatever the fuck it was, you know, and then I started downloading all that crazy shit too, but the Power of Zeus, you know, all these sort of things, which all these reissues, you know, so it's like a lot of that stuff that I was into and that I'm still into was like getting reissued. So there's not a lot of stuff that I think that I'm missing or that I want that's like, because I'm never, like I said, I've never been like chasing like originals, you know. I just want like a good clean copy on vinyl that I can listen to when I want to, you know. And I also I don't like, I play cheap guitars for the same reason. It's like I don't want to fuck up my stuff. Like if it gets fucked up, then I don't care, you know. If it gets stolen, I don't care, you know. I don't like to have sentimental value towards like objects, you know.
My final question for you, Jed, is an existential one.
Existential. Okay.
What does all of this mean? Why are we here on this planet doing what we're doing? What is the meaning of all this? What's the meaning of life?
What's the meaning of life?
This question doesn't get asked often enough, and I think about it all the time. I work so much. You work constantly. You're constantly doing something.
Yes.
Whatever it might be.
Yes. And I think about this a lot too.
But why? Not necessarily why do you do that, but what is our purpose?
The only purpose that I've sort of found, and that what kind of gets me through the day, is to sort of be of service to other people. See, maybe there's some people that'll see this and they haven't seen me in a long time and they'll think like this guy's full of shit. You know? But I promise you, I'm like a hard guy to deal with when you first know me. Like when I first meet people, a lot of times so many times my friends in my life have been like, man, you were a fucking asshole when I first met you. I hated you, you know? I'm like a shirt off the top of my back kind of guy, but also like kind of can be brisk and difficult to deal with. And
you're a no nonsense,
opinionated, whatever. But when I drive around and I think to myself, you know, I feel like we have to just be here to try to help each other, you know, even if we disagree politically or whatever, you know. I feel like the point is to try to help each other. And I feel like I try to do as much as I can. If someone asks me for something, and if I can make it work, I try to help someone. And I'm always like kind of offended if I ask someone for help and they say no or they can't do it. Like I take that personally. I end up doing a lot of things on my own, and I end up shooting myself in the foot a lot of times by not asking for help and going around people and then getting to the point where I'm like, hey, I did this thing, and they're like, I didn't want you to do it that way, like you fucked it up, like, you know, if you would have asked me like how we should have done it, we could have worked on it together. So I think it's like, it's trying to figure out a way to work together with each other, you know, as best you can, or whatever that means, you know. I think work is a thing. It's like, look at ants, you know, it's like, people are like, oh, you shouldn't be strapped down to a desk job your whole life. Like you're gonna ruin you're wasting your life in doing all these things. And I agree with that, but there's gotta be, we're supposed to build things, you know, we're supposed to make things, we're supposed to make buildings, we're supposed to make art, we're supposed to make cars, we're supposed to whatever, you know.
If nothing else, we need to build and make the things that keep us alive. Not just individually, but as a species. Right.
And I do believe that like there's something happening with the environment. I don't know what. This is the thing. People ask me about politics and stuff. I go, my name's Jed. I grew up in a trailer park. Like, you don't want to know what I think. Like, I'm not. Why would I? My opinion's gonna be bad. Like, I don't know. Like, but like, I feel like.
But you're a thinker. And
yes.
even though maybe you don't have like a master's degree in philosophy, you are a thinking man, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, Jed, because you're always interesting to talk to.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Are we leaving it at that, or do you want me to keep
No,
going?
please finish.
I'm just saying that I feel like whatever our issues are, whatever the problems is, we can figure out a way to get out of it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's just a constant evolution that we're having, is to like, something knocks you down, you get back up, you figure out a way to make it work, and you do that globally through some sort of telekinetic connection that's we all want, you know, to make things better for everyone. And that's all I can hold on to, because if I don't hold on to that, then it can get real dark real fast, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you came to that conclusion, because I did too. I have a very similar thought process on that question myself. We are just a species of creatures, just like any other animal. Yes. Let's not forget that. And if we don't, you know, take care of each other and do things that support each other and try to have a little fun while we do it,
yeah,
it's all pretty neat.
I think you got to have a sense of humor about all of it too, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was laughing. We had to print this. I took this poster that I got. Jeff had gotten it off of eBay. This like Postus 80s heavy metal poster, and I wanted to use it as like a digital like thing, like remake it and make a flyer out of it for a thing we're doing down the road. Mm-hmm. And so I took it to Kinko's, and the guy that works there is from Africa, you know, and I'm handing him this heavy metal poster, and he's scanning it in, you know, and I'm just thinking to myself, you know, like, it's Saturday. I'm like, most you know, 45-year-old men are probably like with their kids doing something, and I'm like with this guy from Africa, and we're scanning in this like ridiculous heavy metal poster, and I'm just laughing at, like, you know, the absurdity of the moment, you know.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And being with your kids is fine too.
Sure, yeah, no.
Fun and laughing too.
I'm just laughing at myself, going like, what am I doing? You know, it's insane.
That's great. You're having a good time,
Yeah.
and that's the vibe. And like, that's why I love talking with you, Jed. I appreciate you coming out today, turning what I said would be a 20 to 30 minute thing into whatever this has gone on for. But
Always.
It's been amazingly interesting and fun, and I would love to do it again sometime. Absolutely. If not, we forgot to mention Jed Banger's Ball.
Let's not mention it.
Jed Banger's Ball is Jed's podcast. It's awesome. Go check that out. Thank you again for being here, Jed. I really
thanks for having
appreciate
me. Yeah.
Anytime.
Super
Literally
fun.
any fucking time.
I'll be here.
Right on. And thank you for watching. We'll be back again soon with another video.